Hi, how you doing? I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and welcome back to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And to my left is my able-bodied Executive Officer, Captain Mark Livy. So we're here, it's the month of April. And before we begin the show, our normal segment of Coffee and Connections, I just want to bring on two of my officers, members of the union, Detective Shane Emerson, who is the president, and Sergeant Guy Maloney, who is the past vice president. Both of these men were part of the union's negotiating team and negotiated the 2019 contract on behalf of the Wolfeboro Police Benevolent Union. And they just want to express their thanks to the citizens of Wolfeboro who overwhelmingly supported the union contract. And I think that union contract was well done on both sides. It was well done on the union side. It was some skillful negotiation. It was well done on the part of the town's negotiating committee. Anytime both sides can walk away from a negotiation thinking that they could have done better, you know you've had a good negotiation. And that's what happened in this one. And I just want to say just one thing. My personal opinion is that anytime you can get a relatively lengthy contract, whether it's 2 or 3 or in this case 4 years, it saves money. It's a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. There were some provisions left in the contract that allow either side to reopen negotiations should they want to under certain circumstances, primarily health benefits and the like. And that's there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. That's okay to do. The contract saves money. When we look at one of my goals of my administration, which is the long-term curbing of government spending, okay, not just police department spending, but government spending. There are different ways and methods and techniques to do that, okay? And this may be a little counterintuitive, but sometimes you have to spend a little bit of money up front to get a longer savings, a savings in a distance, and that's what these contracts do. They allow us to take that line that everybody's familiar with going up and up and up, and then they allow us to bend it a little and bring it back down or level it off. And that's one of the goals of my administration as the chief of police is to curb our long-term spending and to control that long-term spending. There's other ways to do that. Capital outlays, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in a moment when we talk about the fiscal year 2019 budget, but doing this with capital outlays and purchasing of capital equipment when you can saves money long term. It saves a lot of money. We'll talk about that here in a moment. So again, I just want to thank the union for coming down here and joining us, and momentarily you're going to be hearing from Detective Shane Emerson and Sergeant Guy Maloney, the past vice president of the union. They just want to pass on and express their thanks to the good citizens of Wolfeboro, so overwhelmingly supporting that union contract. That was really quite substantial. There was a substantial number of voters that voted in favor of that. It was really good. Did you have anything you wanted to say about that, Captain?
No, I just about the union contract. I think it's a great thing, and it does help moving on for our budgets. Yeah, for our budgets. So everyone knows what's ahead. We know what's in our budget. I think it's a great contract. What the nice part is, like you said, the provision that they do have, that they can open it up for health benefits. If something changes within the 4 years, which is a good chance it will, it might go up, it might go down here and there.
Either side can do that.
Yeah, so I think that's a great provision to have, especially with a 4-year long contract like this.
Yeah, one last thing I just want to mention that the captain and I see no benefit from that union contract. We're not members of the union. We're not involved in the negotiation either for the union or against the union. We're not on the town's negotiating committee, neither one of us. And these negotiations are really kept secret, if you will, as well they should be, right? That's a requirement by law. And the town has a negotiating committee. It typically consists of in this case, a police commissioner, a board of selectmen member, and some members from the town administration, the town manager, usually in the finance officer, and they're part of the negotiating committee. But that varies, or could vary from year to year. But that's typically who's on it. So we're not on it. We just see the end result, and when we looked at the end result of the contract, we thought it was good, both from the saving standpoint that the town essentially receives over time, and the union. So I think it's good. And again, anytime you can have a negotiation of any sort where both parties walk away thinking they could have done better or they could have got more, that's when you've had a great negotiation, right? Because that's what you want. That's how you want to leave, right? It's give and take, right? It's 50-50, and I think they had a good job. So my hat's off to the town negotiating committee as well as the union's negotiating team for returning what I thought was a pretty decent contract, and on both for both sides, for both parties. So having said that, now I'm just going to we're going to take a break. We're going to turn it over to the union, and they just want to express their thanks to the citizens. Thank you very much, and stay tuned for more Coffee and Connections with the Chief. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. I'm Guy Maloney, a patrol sergeant with the Wolfeboro Police Department. I'm here as a representative of the Wolfeboro Police Union, and I was in a position of vice president. Just wanted to take this opportunity and thank the town of Wolfeboro and the citizens for supporting the Wolfeboro Police Department and Wolfeboro Central Dispatch on supporting us with the union contract, which passed this past March. And it was a long process that we were engaged with other various town members that began back, I think, maybe last August or September. And we feel that we presented a really good package for employees to include pay and benefits, and it was a nice long contract for 4 years, something that we've never had before, and it's something that we feel will also be able to retain current employees for many years to come, and also attract new applicants to Wolfeboro who are highly qualified, have degrees and special training, which will be very beneficial for the town. So thank you very much. Pass it along to Detective Emerson.
Again, just follow up what he said. Thank you very much for your support, and turn it back over to Coffee with the Chief.
Hi, welcome back to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. It is the month of April, as I said earlier, and so a lot of things have happened. It's been an exciting past month or so. We had the town vote on Tuesday, the 12th of March. So the operating budget passed. Thank you, folks, very much for doing that. I just wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about that. You know, that operating budget is so critically important. And I know there was some concern, and some gentlemen and others had written about, maybe wanting to go into a default budget. And, boy, those default budgets really tremendously impact the town negatively, and it takes years to recoup. And we're trying to fix things as we move forward, issues or problems or purchase equipment or what have you. And when you go into a default budget, you just can't do that. Costs go up, and it just makes buying that equipment more expensive the following year. It's just typically never a good thing to do. But having said that, I think a lot of the town did see some areas of concern, and I think that resonated very clearly. And I think all the department heads, and myself included, got a wake-up call, if you will, and we'll be taking a closer look at the budget in the future. And so having said that, I want to say, yes, I understand where some of the opponents to the town budget, operating budget, were coming from. I certainly understand, and I'll be paying more attention to those concerns as we move forward. And I just want to let everybody know that I get it, I see it, and I heard you loud and clear. So we'll be taking a closer look at the budget. In fact, we'll start our fiscal year 20 budget construction in July, this coming July, and I'm not anticipating any major expenditures this coming year for the police department. So I think it'll be a relatively straightforward and benign budget. I think this last go around, we had an opportunity to fix a number of issues that got fixed. Captain, would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that, especially with all the stuff that I'll go into. Is not to take it away from you, but especially with this budget, a huge thing is that we got our 14th officer that we're in the process of hiring. So we did put out in March a letter out there on our Facebook page and hit some other areas of medias to get applications for a new officer. On April 3rd, we have a PT test, and we have 12 applicants that put a resume and cover letter in, so that's exciting. Yep. So we'll get to that process as we keep going on, and I'll keep you informed of how that's going. I believe the oral board's probably going to be sometime in the last week of April. And then hopefully sometime with a background, which could take about 2 to 4 weeks, we have a new officer here by June 1st. That's kind of the goal that we're kind of looking at, to get somebody here. During that process, we found out that Officer Mike Fenton decided to go back to Wakefield PD. So he did leave us in the beginning of March. I think March 2nd was his last day. So he's back as a sergeant over in Wakefield. We wish him the best. With that, Officer Chris Dustin, who is in our part-time position, has filled his position as the 13th officer. So congratulations to him. He was sworn in at the end of February. And you'll see him out in the road as you saw him before, but now he's in the full-time position, which he's got big smiles on his face. So, so that's a good thing. So there's a lot of things happening. Other than that, we did put the order in for the 2020 Ford Explorer. So that should be coming hopefully by July. We do see that. We'll be on the road by then. I don't know. We have all the upfit to put in there. We're talking light bars, the radios, the consoles, the graphics on the side. That goes down to two-way, which is down in Newington. They set all that stuff up. So we're hoping by the end of summer we do have that in patrol. It is a process. Right now, the 2020s, they haven't seen them out. So none of the merchandise, none of the... for prices wise, nobody's seen it yet. There is somewhat of a little redesign to it on the interior, a little changes, a little shape, form a little differently. So not too big, but so we haven't seen any prices out, which means they haven't seen the car yet. So things probably get pushed back a little. So on the other end, we ordered the new tasers for all the officers, which I think is a great thing. We have the original tasers that when they first came out. So we've had those for, God, what's it been, 10, 12 years? Oh, easy. Yeah, so that's a long time with this equipment. So why do we order that? As we mentioned before, they don't make parts for them. The parts are gone, so if they break, they are out. So it's easier to go in with these kind of programs that they do have now. It's almost like a little lease program, but it's a 5-year program, so you'll see it in our budget every year. But it involves the taser, the holster, unlimited amount of rounds, but cartridges, which is great for our training purposes because they are expensive with the last purchase that we do have. It makes it hard for training, so that's great. We're going to be working with the Carroll County Corrections, who does a lot of training up there, and they're certified in a lot of areas. So they're actually going to train all our officers, including the two people in front of you. We do not have to get hit with these ones, so that's exciting.
They hurt.
If you ever heard the chief scream, that's a video you want to see. So yeah, things are moving on. I mean, we're busy right now. April is busy due to the budget passing and a lot of upgrades that we're going through and a little process of the new officer. So I mean, other than the grants that we do have that are still out there, I keep saying that every month, you'll see the officers out there. I'm actually starting to write the 2020 highway safety grants that just did come out, and they do have some changes there. So I believe I can get some more equipments to offset some of the budgets that we do have for the 2020, which is going to decrease the budget for our side on some equipment that we need still, and get to that part with the cruisers. We're talking like stop sticks, radars, to equip all our cruisers. So that's a good thing. So so I'm in the process of that. April 8th, that's due into the state. So that's not much time as writing those, but I'm on it. Other than that, that's pretty much what April's bringing in. I mean, dispatch, we did hire, he is just starting, Cody. Permanent part-time. Yeah, permanent part-time. So we did, forgot about that. So we have a part-time, which is Heather Callaghan's. She was in our part-time, so now she's moved into the permanent part-time position, which is great. So she's there 3 times a week, which is doing that job. It's great to get somebody in there continually every week to do that job on different kind of shifts. So she does a night shift, a day shift, and a midnight shift. So which is good. That's what she wanted. So it works for her life, and it works for us with a schedule. So that's a bonus for everybody. We did hire another part-timer, Cody Lloyd. He works over at the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, so he's going to help out with covering shifts. So he's just started his FTO, FTD program. That's what we call it with dispatch. So that's basically a field training. So that'll be about 2 to 4 weeks, knowing that he's done the job up in Carroll. He's just got to learn how we do things over here in Wolfeboro. So that's really the only change. They use the same system as we do, so that makes it a lot easier when we can get somebody that's already done the job using IMC, which is the programs we use. So other than that, I'll turn it back over to the chief.
Hey, thank you very much. And I just want to mention one thing on Officer Fenton, who's a great police officer. We wish him the very best over in Wakefield. And he left to take a promotion to sergeant in Wakefield. So that was the reason for that lateral move, if you will, was to take a promotion over there in Wakefield. We will never stand in the way of an officer wanting to improve himself. And I laud every officer that wants to compete for promotion, because that's the way you get better, right? And I think you should be doing that. You should be trying to move up. And
Officer Fenton's still staying with us as part-time, so that's a good thing. So you'll still see him out there here and there, in our uniform, but he is he's going to stick with us in part-time and help us out still. So that's great. So we still keep him. He's advancing himself, but you'll still see him in Wolfeboro as a part-time officer.
Thanks, Captain. Yeah, that's a really good point. And the other thing I want to point out is in years past where we've had a vacancy, we were lucky to maybe get 1 or 2 resumes. This time we had 10. 12. Two just came in. But we had 10 right away waiting as soon as Mike's chair hadn't even gotten cold, and we had 10 resumes on our desk. So that tells us that we're doing something right over here. And I really appreciate that. And we have people waiting in the wings, waiting at the door to compete for that open assignment. So that is really good. So we're moving forward with that. Also, one of the things that got passed by the voters, and again, I'm very grateful for, is the capital improvement project for the dispatch console. And that is good. And putting a little bit of money aside for capital improvements, I think is very good. It's a very good idea. And this will serve us well moving forward into upgrading that dispatch console. We know that it's not going to make it much longer. We're nursing it along now, and so I think we should get another 4 or 5 years out of that before it has to be replaced. But that'll be that was a good thing, and you'll see that in the budget again next year.
So the to put it in perspective for any IT people that are out there, it's still using XP, which is it's not even compatible with Microsoft anymore. So it's no updates. There's no parts for it. So that we've got it to the point where we did the last upgrade, and we're just hoping for the best as we keep going for the 4 years.
Yeah, and so moving forward, what you're going to see once that project is completed, we'll still advocate for putting a little bit of money aside, even though we get the new dispatch console in say 4 or 5 years, and that's what we're hoping for. But when the new dispatch console does come in 4 or 5 years, I'm still going to advocate putting a little bit of money aside to save up for that console's eventual replacement. I think by because these items are so expensive, putting a little bit of money aside just in case something happens, or when you need to replace it in say 10 years or 15 years down the road, you have the money there and it's available immediately, and it's not a sticker shock or a massive hit to the budget. I think this is really, really important to do. And again, in terms of talking about my strategy of curbing long-term budgetary growth, this is exactly the types of strategies that we're going to be doing. The captain spoke a little bit about grants. We write a lot of grants. This is something that Chief Chase and I did when he was the chief and I was the executive officer. And this is something that the captain and I are doing. The captain's doing a phenomenal job at writing grants. We're getting more and more grants every year. Anytime we can get federal grants to offset our operational budget, our operating budget, it's a good thing because it helps us curb long-term budgetary spending. It helps us purchase equipment that we need to meet the demands of present and future policing requirements. And it reduces our long-term budgetary spending. It actually reduces our short-term budgetary spending, which is always a good thing. So those processes will be continuing. The other thing I'd like to thank the folks that voted for it was the purchase of the police cruiser through use of the special police detail fund. That was already raised money, if you will, or that was already available money, and that was good. That had zero impact on the tax base, zero impact, and so that was essentially a revenue revolving account. And we're very grateful that you allowed us to do that. And again, anytime we can do a capital purchase, especially with money that was non-taxpayer money, is a good thing because it offsets our budgetary growth and reduces that, and that's what I like to see. So be looking forward to those things in the future. Again, curbing long-term spending is one of my goals. And how do we do that, and the strategies that we use to do that. We'll be doing the deep dive into that and figuring that out. I do want to let everybody know that when we in the police department start constructing our budget, this is a process that we started this year. In fact, a new dimension, if you will, to that process is we brought in a budget committee member, we brought in a board of selectmen member, and then our budget team at the Wolfeboro Police Department, and we sat down for a number of meetings, several meetings, and we tortured the numbers, so to speak. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. We really looked at the budget. We looked at how to balance the need for resources versus the tax impact on the citizens. And so that was always first and foremost in our mind. And there was some great discussions, good, honest, frank talk among all concerned. And at the end of the day, I think we really returned a pretty good budget that had really had a lot of the issues already worked out before it got to the police commission, before it got to the town manager, before it got to the board of selectmen, and ultimately before it went before the budget committee. So we're very grateful for that. This year, we're going to be bringing in a police commission member. In fact, it's going to be our new police commission member, Bob O'Brien. So we want to thank him for running and getting elected, and our hats off to Bob. We know he's going to be a great police commissioner. He has a lot of experience. He's a retired police captain from New Jersey. 30 plus years, as a couple of master's degrees, and more importantly, he's served on the budget committee for either 3 or 6 years. I'm not sure, multiple terms there, but he brings with him an incredible amount of experience and community service. And Bob is also very involved in the community. I know he's a a couple of different service organizations, to include the Rotary. I know he's heavily involved in the ski programs over at Gunstock. He's on the ski patrol over there. He does a lot of work with wounded warriors. So my hat's off to Bob. He's a great American, and very deeply cares about his community. So we're very happy to have him as a member of the Wolfeboro Police Commission, and he will be a new addition to our budget team as we move forward, preparing in July the fiscal year 2020 budget. And that's a very long process. We spent about a good 3 months preparing that budget and looking at every aspect of the budget, and again, looking at the numbers and torturing the numbers and seeing where we can gain savings and where we can gain some efficiencies. And of course, the whole process is, make sure we have better outcomes over time. And I hope you folks tune into the commission meeting, because I'll be talking about that. Just that topic, better outcomes in this year, and I'm very, very happy that in the month of February, for example, we had exactly 5 motor vehicle crashes for the entire month. With all that bad weather, all we had was 5 motor vehicle crashes. That's phenomenal. And that is reflective of the good work the captain has done, and the work that our officers are out there doing with the motor vehicle stops, and the constant and repetitive and the inculcated approach that we take on warnings as opposed to traffic tickets. Yes, it's a long process, but boy, we're getting there. And I'll tell you, I remember the days when I first started here. There were days that we would never get off. I would never get off of South Main Street. There were so many car crashes, especially during inclement weather. So for the entire month of February to have simply 5 motor vehicle crashes, and of course I recognize even 1 is too many, but it's a lot better than having 15 or 20. And so that's good. Again, it's about better outcomes over time, and that's what we're trying to achieve, right? And of course this time last year we had 0 motor vehicle crashes. In fact, it was kind of funny, because January, February, and March of 2018, we had 0 for 3 months in a row, and I was convinced that we had a glitch in the software, right? And I'm running it multiple different ways and checking different database programs that we had. So, there has to be an error. There has to be, and this is impossible. And it wasn't. We actually had 3 months in a row we had 0 motor vehicle crashes, and again, it's due to the dedicated efforts that our officers are out there making the stops, and citizens paying attention and appreciating the fact that the officers are out there stopping them and listening to what the officers had to say in terms of the warnings and the education-minded approach. And again, that's community policing at its finest. And again, better outcomes over time, right? Taking that line and bending it down, making a big U out of that on the graph. That's what it's all about, right? Better outcomes over time. So that's really it. Thank you. It's a little bit long segment for Coffee and Connections with the Chief, but I'm really glad that you folks are tuning in. And just please stay tuned for the safety tip of the month. And again, thank you very much. This is Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and to my left is Captain Mark Livy, and we wish you a very happy April, and please be safe out there. Thank you. Hi, how are you? Welcome back to Coffee and Connections. And we do have a guest with us today, Kevin, who is up here visiting his parents from Massachusetts, and he asked to be on the show, and so here we are. Kevin, how are you?
I'm great. Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I spent a lot of time summers coming up to the lakes around here, and more recently to Wolfeboro. So I visit quite often. My parents actually retired on Lake Wentworth here in Wolfeboro, and so it's just a nice way to come up and visit and experience the area.
Oh, very nice. We're really happy to have you up here, and of course, I was telling you earlier before the show, we have a lot of our police officers from Massachusetts. I'm from Massachusetts originally myself, from the city of Cambridge. So yeah, it's funny. We all fall in love with New Hampshire, and we all make our way back here. When we have an opportunity. So, Kevin, did you have a question or something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, so coming into the summer, we'll be up quite a lot with family and spending time at Wentworth. And I just wanted to get a sense of how the police here sort of monitor situations around the lake and keep things safe for families.
Sure, yeah, that's a fantastic question. And so the Wolfeboro Police Department is dedicated to the principles of community policing, right, which is what I call responsible policing. It involves the community and involves community resources in the problem-solving process, right? And so when we talk about policing and how if you will, police Wolfeboro, we break the town up into patrol sectors because it's a large town, right? Wolfeboro is about 56, 57 square miles, all right? It's a big area. We talk about the city of Cambridge that, has about 300,000 people in it, for example. That's only 2 miles by 3 miles, right? You consider Wolfeboro at 56 square miles. This is a lot of ground to cover, and we have people living everywhere. Additionally, the Lake Wentworth area, which was where you said your folks were from, there's a lot of shoreline. There's a lot of homes, beautiful homes in that area. So we generally have patrols out round the clock in that sector, and then we have patrols in other locations as well. And the patrols are relieved from time to time, and we get a fresh set of eyes moving through around the clock. Each patrol is supervised by a patrol sergeant who floats between the various sectors, checking on the patrol and making sure that the men or women out there are essentially doing their job. During the winter months, there's really no change to how we conduct our patrol activity. Of course, during inclement weather, things are a little bit different. The officers are probably more stationary in those locations as road travel permits. Now, one of the things that I do want to do and talk about future policing is during the wintertime when the lakes freeze. I do recognize that there's a lot of recreational activity that occurs, especially on Lake Wentworth. One of the things we started doing probably a good 15 years ago was getting the officers, believe it or not, out on the ice on four-wheelers and checking on a lot of the residential properties on the lakeside as well as the island properties that are out there. I think that's really important to do. Those folks pay a lot of money in taxes. They're entitled to the same police services that everybody else is. The problem is that I'm limited in my equipment, and I'm limited as to how I do that. I will never put a vehicle, a four-wheel drive patrol vehicle out on the ice because I'm worried about a $54,000 piece of equipment going through the ice. But what I will do is either put them out on four-wheelers or snowmobiles so they can check on the various properties and so forth and so on. So this is one of my goals as we move forward, through public-private partnerships, try to pick up four-wheelers that we can use for dedicated patrols in the wintertime. It hasn't happened yet, and our patrols are intermittent, but I want to get it to where it's a routine, systemic patrol out on Lake Wentworth and then on some of the islands and bays of Wolfeboro. But again, that would be weather permitting and weather dependent, ice dependent, most importantly, and also equipment dependent. Did I answer your questions?
Yes, you did. Yeah, it's very nice to hear, and thank you for your service. It's great.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
It really gets me out of the house. Gives me something to do. No, I appreciate you being on, and I really enjoy serving here in Wolfeboro. This is a very beautiful, bucolic area. I'm very grateful that I landed here, and of course, now I've been here. This marks my 23rd year as a police officer for the town of Wolfeboro, and of course, I'm very fortunate now to be moving into my third year as chief of police. So it's good. I'm very happy and very grateful that I landed here. Hey, Kevin, thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Hi, how are you? This is Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and welcome back to Coffee and Connections. And I'm here with your safety tip of the month. And so we're in the month of April, and I know many of you drive the back roads just like I do. I was out on the back roads, in fact, yesterday, and gosh, is it muddy out there. Be careful. Be mindful that a lot of the secondary and tertiary road systems in the back country are not paved. It's mud season. Welcome to mud season. And you're going to sink, right? And the cars are going to get dirty. The shoulders are soft. You got to be really, really careful. And even on the hardball roads, the shoulders are going to be soft. We've had a lot of snow. We've had a lot of rain. It was a wet winter. So please be careful out there. Go slow. Try to avoid the shoulders of the road at all possible. And if you're out on the back roads and it looks muddy, don't go down. You're just going to get mired. And once you get mired in this mud, it's virtually impossible to get out of it without the assistance of a wrecker. So please be careful out there. Watch the weight limits on the dirt roads out there, and be mindful that it is mud season, and it is awfully wet out there. So please be careful. And as always, be safe out there. Again, this is Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department. Thank you for joining in to Coffee and Connections with the Chief, and I'll see you next month. Well, folks, that concludes another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. I really do appreciate you tuning in. Again, if you want to be on the show, simply contact Timothy down at Wolfeboro Community TV, or let myself or the captain know. Give us a call. We always want to hear from you. We can talk about anything you want. We can talk about the New England Patriots. We can talk about Fourth Amendment issues. We can talk about baseball. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Come on the show. And be my guest on Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And as always, coffee's on me. Have a great day and be safe out there. Thank you. Bye-bye.